Sofia Martinez had always been good with numbers.
Growing up in a small apartment above her grandmother's bakery, she learned early that every penny counted. While other kids played outside, Sofia sat at the kitchen table helping her grandmother calculate flour costs and profit margins. Math came naturally to her, like breathing or walking. When she graduated from college with an accounting degree, Sofia thought her biggest worry would be student loans. She never imagined she'd end up working for the most dangerous man in the city.
The job posting seemed normal enough. Administrative assistant needed for private business office. Good pay, flexible hours, references required. Sofia had been unemployed for 3 months after her previous company downsized. Her savings account was nearly empty, and her grandmother's medical bills kept growing. She couldn't afford to be picky. The office building looked respectable from the outside.
Tall glass windows, marble lobby, security guards in crisp uniforms. Sofia adjusted her blazer and checked her reflection in the elevator doors as she rode to the 15th floor. The elevator dinged softly, and the doors opened to reveal a reception area that screamed money. Leather furniture, original artwork, fresh flowers that probably cost more than Sofia's monthly grocery budget. A woman with perfectly styled hair and designer clothing looked up from behind a mahogany desk. Her smile was professional but cold, like she was sizing Sofia up for weaknesses. "Sofia Martinez," the woman asked, checking something on her computer screen.
"You're here for the administrative position?" Sofia nodded, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. "Yes, I have my resume and references." "Excellent. Mr. Romano will see you shortly. Please have a seat."
Sofia settled into one of the leather chairs, her hands sweating slightly as she clutched her portfolio. The office was quiet except for the soft hum of air conditioning and distant city traffic. She noticed that none of the magazines on the coffee table were business publications. Instead, there were Italian lifestyle magazines and what looked like trade journals for restaurants. After what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, a door opened and a man emerged. He was younger than Sofia had expected, maybe in his early 30s, with dark hair and sharp features. His suit probably cost more than Sofia's car, and he wore it like armor. But it was his eyes that caught her attention. Dark, intelligent, and carefully controlled.
"Miss Martinez," he said, extending his hand.
His voice was smooth, with just a hint of an accent she couldn't place.
"I'm Vincent Romano. Thank you for coming in." His handshake was firm but brief.
Up close, Sofia could see a small scar above his left eyebrow and the way his eyes seemed to catalog every detail about her appearance. She felt like he was reading her life story just by looking at her.
"Please, come into my office." Vincent's office was even more impressive than the reception area. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, and the furniture looked like it belonged in a museum. But Sofia noticed other details too.
The way the desk was positioned so Vincent could see both the door and the windows.
The fact that there were no family photos anywhere, just expensive art. The subtle bulge under his jacket that suggested he was armed.
"Tell me about yourself, Miss Martinez," Vincent said, settling behind his desk.
"Your resume is impressive, but I prefer to hear directly from candidates."
Sofia launched into the prepared speech she'd practiced in the mirror.
College degree, previous work experience, attention to detail, reliable and trustworthy. Standard job interview responses.
But as she spoke, she noticed Vincent wasn't really listening to her words. He was watching her body language, the way she sat, how she gestured with her hands.
"Why do you need this job?" he asked suddenly, interrupting her explanation of her organizational skills. The question caught Sofia off guard. I need to work. I have bills to pay, and my grandmother is sick," Vincent finished. "Yes, I know. Diabetes, correct?"
"The medical bills are substantial."
Sofia's blood turned cold. "How do you know that?"
Vincent smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I research all potential employees thoroughly, Miss Martinez. Your grandmother raised you after your parents died in that car accident when you were 8. You worked 2 jobs to put yourself through college.
You've never been arrested, never even had a speeding ticket.
You volunteer at the animal shelter on weekends.
You're exactly what I'm looking for. What kind of business is this?
Sophia asked, her voice barely above a whisper.
Import and export, Vincent replied smoothly. We deal with various goods from overseas. Nothing illegal, I assure you. But we do value discretion and loyalty above all else. Sophia wanted to leave.
Every instinct screamed that this was wrong, dangerous. But then she thought about her grandmother's insulin costs, about the eviction notice that would arrive next month if she couldn't find work soon.
The salary you mentioned in the job posting is accurate. 30% above market rate, plus health insurance and performance bonuses. In exchange, I expect absolute loyalty and complete discretion about anything you might see or hear in this office. Sophia's practical mind warred with her survival instincts.
The money was too good, and she was too desperate.
What would my duties include? Standard administrative work. Scheduling, filing, answering phones. Some light bookkeeping, though we have accountants for the complex financial matters.
Occasionally, you might need to attend business dinners or social events as my assistant. It sounded normal enough, except for the part where her new boss had somehow obtained her entire life history before their first meeting.
I'll need to think about it, Sophia said carefully.
Vincent nodded as if he'd expected this response.
Of course. Take the weekend. But Miss Martinez?
He leaned forward slightly, and Sophia caught a glimpse of something dangerous in his expression.
I don't offer positions like this often. And when I do, I expect an answer quickly.
Sophia left the building with her head spinning. She spent the weekend researching Vincent Romano online, but found surprisingly little. A few mentions in business journals, some charity fundraiser photos where he appeared in expensive suits shaking hands with city officials. Nothing that explained the careful security measures or the way he'd looked at her like he was evaluating a potential threat. But when Monday morning came and Sophia counted the pills left in her grandmother's medicine bottle, the decision made itself. She called the office and accepted the job. Her first day started normally enough. The receptionist, who introduced herself as Angela, showed Sophia to a small but well-appointed office adjacent to Vincent's. Her computer was top of the line, and her desk came pre-stocked with expensive pens and leather-bound notebooks. Few things to remember, Angela said, her tone friendly but firm.
Mr. Romano doesn't like to be disturbed when his door is closed.
All phone calls go through you first.
And anything you hear or see here stays here. Understand? Sophia nodded, settling into her chair. The morning passed quietly.
She answered phones, scheduled appointments, and organized files. The callers were polite, speaking in accented English about shipment schedules and delivery confirmations.
Everything seemed legitimate.
It was during her lunch break that Sophia first realized something was seriously wrong. She'd gone to the small kitchen area to eat the sandwich she'd brought from home when she overheard voices coming from Vincent's office. The door was slightly ajar, and the conversation was in rapid Italian.
Sophia didn't speak Italian, but the tone was unmistakable. Someone was angry, and someone else was making threats.
She crept closer to the door, her curiosity overriding her common sense. Through the crack, she could see Vincent sitting behind his desk, completely calm despite the agitated man pacing in front of him. The visitor was older, heavy-set, with expensive clothes and an air of barely controlled violence.
You cannot simply decide to change the terms, the older man said in heavily accented English. We had an agreement. Agreements can be renegotiated, Vincent replied coolly. Especially when circumstances change. The families will not accept this. You're playing a dangerous game, Romano.
I don't play games, Carlucci. I make business decisions.
And my decision is final.
The older man leaned across Vincent's desk, his face red with anger.
You forget who you're talking to, boy. I knew your father. He understood respect.
For the first time since Sophia had met him, Vincent's composure cracked. His jaw tightened, and something cold flickered in his eyes.
My father is dead, he said quietly. and I am not him.
You'd do well to remember that. Sophia backed away from the door, her heart pounding. She'd heard enough mob movies to recognize the subtext of that conversation.
Vincent Romano wasn't just running an import business.
He was running something much more dangerous.
The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur.
Sophia tried to focus on her work, but her mind kept replaying the conversation she'd overheard. When 5 o'clock came, she gathered her things quickly, eager to escape the office and think about what she'd learned.
Miss Martinez, Vincent's voice stopped her at the elevator. A word before you leave?
Her stomach dropped, but she forced herself to turn around with a polite smile.
Of course, Mr. Romano.
He gestured toward his office, and Sophia followed on unsteady legs.
Had he seen her listening at the door? Was this where her short-lived employment came to an end?
Vincent closed the door behind them and moved to the windows, hands clasped behind his back as he looked out at the city below. "How was your first day?" he asked conversationally.
"Fine. Everything was fine." "Good.
I hope you'll be happy here, Miss Martinez.
Loyal employees are valuable to me.
I take care of people who take care of me." There was something in his tone that made Sophia's skin crawl.
I understand. Do you?
Vincent turned to face her, and Sophia felt like a mouse being studied by a particularly intelligent cat.
I hope so. Because loyalty is not just about doing good work.
It's about understanding that some conversations are private.
Some knowledge is sensitive. Sophia's mouth went dry.
He did know she'd been listening. "I would never repeat anything I heard here," she managed to say.
"I believe you," Vincent said, moving closer. "Because you're a smart woman, Miss Martinez. Smart enough to understand that some secrets are dangerous to share.
And I think you care too much about your grandmother's well-being to do anything foolish." The threat was delivered so quietly, so politely, that it took Sophia a moment to process it fully. When she did, fear shot through her like ice water.
"I understand," she whispered. "Excellent. I'll see you tomorrow morning. Have a good evening."
Sophia made it to the elevator before her hands started shaking. As the doors closed, she caught one last glimpse of Vincent watching her from his doorway, his expression unreadable.
She'd taken a job with the Mafia. And now she was trapped.
6 months later, Sophia had learned to live with the constant undercurrent of danger that flowed through Romano Enterprises like an electrical current. She'd become expert at not seeing things, not hearing things, and definitely not asking questions about the men who visited Vincent's office carrying briefcases that they guarded like precious children.
The work itself wasn't terrible.
Vincent was demanding but fair, and he'd kept his word about the salary and benefits. Sophia's grandmother's medical bills were manageable now, and for the first time in years, Sophia wasn't lying awake at night calculating how to stretch $20 until her next paycheck. But the price of that security was constant vigilance. Sophia had learned to recognize the different types of visitors. There were the legitimate business contacts, usually nervous accountants or shipping company representatives who spoke in clipped, professional tones. Then there were the others. Men who wore expensive suits but carried themselves like predators. Women with manicured nails and eyes like razors. They spoke in code, and their conversations always seemed to end with handshakes that looked more like agreements between conspirators than business deals.
Sophia had also learned that Vincent Romano was more complicated than she'd initially thought. Yes, he was dangerous.
The scar above his eyebrow had come from a knife fight, according to Angela, who'd let that detail slip during a rare moment of office gossip. And the way subordinates scurried to please him suggested that disappointing Vincent Romano was not a survivable career move.
But he was also unexpectedly kind, at least to Sophia.
When her grandmother had a health scare that required emergency surgery, Vincent had personally called the hospital to ensure she received the best care. When Sophia mentioned that her car was making strange noises, a mechanic had appeared at her apartment the next day to fix it free of charge. He never made these gestures seem like favors that would require repayment. They were simply acts of consideration from an employer who valued his assistant.
It would have been easier if Vincent had been a monster.
Sophia could have planned her escape, saved her money, and eventually found another job. Instead, she found herself genuinely liking her boss, which made everything infinitely more complicated. The crisis came on a Tuesday in October. Sophia arrived at work to find the office buzzing with an energy she'd learned to recognize as dangerous. Angela's usual professional smile was replaced by tight-lipped anxiety, and the security guards in the lobby had been doubled.
"Mr. Romano wants to see you immediately," Angela said as soon as Sophia walked through the door. Vincent's office felt different when Sophia entered.
The blinds were drawn, casting everything in shadows, and Vincent stood behind his desk like a general preparing for war. Two other men flanked him, both wearing the kind of suits that couldn't quite hide their weapons. "Miss Martinez," Vincent said, his voice carefully controlled.
"We have a problem."
Sophia's heart started racing, but she forced herself to remain calm.
"What kind of problem?"
"The federal kind," one of the other men said grimly.
"FBI has been sniffing around some of our shipping operations. They're asking questions about our books."
Vincent silenced him with a look. "The point is, Miss Martinez, that we may be facing some scrutiny in the coming weeks."
"The kind of scrutiny that requires absolute loyalty from everyone in this organization." Sophia nodded, not trusting herself to speak.
She'd always known this day might come.
"Unfortunately," Vincent continued, "someone has been feeding information to federal investigators. Financial records, shipping manifests, meeting schedules. Information that only a few people in this organization have access to."
The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Sophia felt the weight of 3 pairs of eyes evaluating her every breath.
"I don't understand," she said carefully.
"Someone with access to my calendar has been providing the FBI with details about my meetings," Vincent said, moving around his desk toward Sophia.
"Someone who handles financial documents has been copying records. Someone I trusted has betrayed that trust." Sophia's mouth went completely dry. "You think it's me?"
"The evidence points in that direction," the second man said coldly.
"You're the only one with access to all the information that's been compromised." "But I would never."
Sophia started, then stopped.
What could she say? That she was innocent? That she'd never even spoken to an FBI agent?
In Vincent's world, innocence was a luxury no one could afford.
"I want to believe you, Miss Martinez," Vincent said quietly. "You've been an exemplary employee.
Loyal, discreet, reliable.
But the evidence is compelling."
Sophia felt trapped, like an animal in a cage that was slowly getting smaller.
"What happens now?"
The two men exchanged glances that suggested they had very specific ideas about what should happen to suspected traitors. Vincent noticed their silent communication and his jaw tightened. "Leave us," he told them.
"Vincent, this isn't smart," the first man protested. "If she's been talking to the feds." "I said leave us."
Vincent's voice carried the kind of authority that ended arguments. The men filed out, but not before giving Sophia looks that promised unpleasant consequences if she tried anything foolish. When the door closed, Sophia found herself alone with Vincent for the first time since her job interview. "Are you going to kill me?" she asked, surprised by how calm she sounded.
Vincent's laugh was bitter. "Is that what you think of me? That I'm some kind of monster who murders innocent women?"
"I think you're a man who protects his business," Sophia replied honestly.
"And if you believe I'm a threat to that business?"
Vincent moved to the windows, staring out at the city with his hands clasped behind his back.
"I've spent the last 6 months watching you, Miss Martinez. The way you work, the way you treat people, the way you care for your grandmother. You're not the type of person who sells information to federal agents for money."
Sophia felt a glimmer of hope.
"Then you believe me?" "I want to."
But wanting to believe someone and being able to afford to believe them are two different things. Vincent turned back toward her, and Sophia was surprised to see something that looked like genuine regret in his expression.
"My associates are convinced you're the leak. They want me to handle this situation in the traditional manner. But you don't want to." "No. I don't." Vincent moved closer, and Sophia noticed the exhaustion in his eyes. You've become important to me, Miss Martinez.
More important than is wise in my line of work.
The admission hung in the air between them like a confession.
Sophia felt her heart rate accelerate for entirely different reasons.
Then don't let them hurt me, she said quietly. It's not that simple.
If I protect you without cause, it looks like weakness.
Weakness gets people killed in my business.
Vincent paused, studying her face intently.
But there might be another way.
What kind of way?
Marriage.
The word hit Sophia like a physical blow.
What?
If you were my wife, touching you would be the same as attacking me directly. No one would dare harm you, regardless of their suspicions. Vincent's voice was calm, businesslike, as if he were discussing a shipping manifest rather than a life-altering decision. Sophia stared at him in shock.
You're serious? Completely.
It would be a business arrangement, nothing more. You'd have my protection, a comfortable life, and your grandmother would receive the best medical care available.
In exchange, I'd have a wife who understands discretion and loyalty. And if I say no?
Vincent's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in his eyes.
Then I'm afraid my associates will handle this situation their way. And Miss Martinez? Their way doesn't involve job termination interviews.
Sophia felt the walls closing in around her. Marriage to a man she barely knew, a man who lived in constant danger, a man whose business dealings would make her an accessory to crimes she didn't even want to understand. Or death, delivered by men who saw her as nothing more than a security threat to be eliminated.
How long do I have to decide? They expect an answer by tonight.
Sophia closed her eyes, thinking of her grandmother's medication schedule, of the small apartment that had finally started to feel secure, of the life she'd built from nothing through sheer determination and careful budgeting.
If I marry you, she said slowly, what would that really mean? Day to day, I mean. You'd live in my house. Attend social functions as my wife. Continue working here, though your role would expand to include more social responsibilities. You'd be protected, provided for, and treated with the respect due to my wife. And what would you get out of it? Vincent was quiet for a long moment. A wife I can trust. Someone who understands my world but isn't corrupted by it. Someone who...
He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully.
Someone who reminds me that there are still good people in the world.
Sophia opened her eyes to find Vincent watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read.
This is insane.
Perhaps. But insanity is often the only rational response to impossible circumstances. Sophia thought about her grandmother, about the quiet life she'd planned, about the normal husband and normal job and normal problems she'd always imagined for herself. Then she thought about the alternative Vincent's associates had in mind.
If I agree, how quickly would this happen? Tonight.
I have a judge who owes me favors. The ceremony would be simple, private. By tomorrow morning, you'd be Sophia Romano, and killing you would be a declaration of war against me.
Sophia felt like she was standing at the edge of a cliff, about to jump into darkness. And you're sure this would work? Your people would accept this?
They'll have to. Disrespecting my wife would be disrespecting me, and that's not a mistake anyone makes twice in this business. The clock on Vincent's desk ticked steadily, marking the seconds of what might be the most important decision of Sophia's life. She thought about fairy tales, about girls who married beasts to save their families, about the price of survival in a world that didn't offer many options to people like her. Please don't fire me, she said quietly, the words coming out more as a plea than a statement.
Vincent's expression softened slightly. Then marry me.
Sophia looked into his dark eyes and saw something she hadn't expected.
Not just calculation or business strategy, but genuine caring. Maybe even the beginning of something deeper.
Yes, she whispered.
I'll marry you.
Vincent nodded once, as if her acceptance had been a foregone conclusion.
Good. Angela will take you shopping for something appropriate to wear. The ceremony is at 8 o'clock.
As Sophia turned to leave, Vincent called her name softly.
Sophia?
She looked back at him, surprised by his use of her first name.
For what it's worth, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure you don't regret this decision. Sophia managed a small smile. For what it's worth, I hope you're right. 6 hours later, Sofia Martinez became Sofia Romano in a brief ceremony attended only by Vincent's lawyer and a judge who asked no questions about the hasty timeline. The ring Vincent slipped onto her finger was a simple platinum band, expensive but understated, like everything else in his world. As they left the courthouse, Vincent took her hand gently. "Welcome to the family, Mrs. Romano," he said quietly. Sophia squeezed his fingers, surprised by how natural the gesture felt. "Thank you for saving my life. Thank you for trusting me with yours. It wasn't love, not yet. But it was the beginning of something that might, with time and care, grow into something real. In a world built on violence and betrayal, maybe that was the most anyone could hope for."